Greetings everyone and welcome back to another Custodes video. Today we're doing a little tier list. Now there are a few important things I want to say first of all before we get into the tier list. Number one being that I am not a top competitive player. At best I am average. I don't want to be a top competitive player. I don't think it's fun. I live somewhere in the space between a casual player and a competitive player, somewhere in the middle. Where I do want to play competitive games and I want to, learn the rules and know how they work and how I can take advantage of them to my, advantage. But I'm also not a meta chaser. If, for example, Custodes just want to run 3 Blade Champions, I'm probably not going to go out and buy 3 Blade Champions. Another example of that would be the Allarus Custodians. Now, a small spoiler for this tier list, but the Allarus Custodians are very good in 10th edition. However, even if they weren't nearly as good as they are, I would probably play with them because they are my favorite model from the Custodes range. So, please keep that in mind before you hit me in the comments with, well actually, if you look for the combo of 15 Custodian guards backed up by blah blah blah, that's fine. That's completely fine. If that's what competitive looks like, whatever. I don't care. That's not for me. So yeah, keep that in mind. I am not a top competitive player, however, I'm not really a casual player either. I'm somewhere in the middle. The second thing is that this is my opinion. If you disagree, that's totally fine. Let me know in the comments why you disagree. Because obviously I'm just one person, I am biased by others' opinions as well as my own opinions from my own games. And then, finally, I just want to say that I did not make this tier list. This tier list was actually made by Art of War. I simply changed up the names of the categories to better reflect what I mean by when I'm placing a unit in whatever tier. Speaking of which, let's explain the tiers real quick. Starting at the top, we have no questions asked, and I mean, that pretty much answers itself, I would say. A unit that goes in no questions asked is that if I see it in a list, I'm just going to be like, yep, okay, that makes sense. No questions asked. Then there is solid choice. And a solid choice is a bit below no questions asked in that it's probably completely fine to include it in your army, but I probably do need to see where does it connect to the army, alright, you have this leader but you don't have the units it can join, so well, that was a very bad example. My point being that it's probably a good choice to include in basically any army, but you might need to build around it just a little bit. Average is, average. It's completely fine choice to take if you just want to put them in your list because they're fun to use or you really like the model. Mostly for fun is, again, pretty explanatory. It's mostly for fun. It's a unit that you can totally include, but, you probably shouldn't if you want to play a competitive game or, want to try and do well at a tournament. And then finally we have because you really want to. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and put because you really want to real quick. That's going to be the 2 gunships, the Ares gunship as well as the Orion gunship, which, looks like there's not a picture for that one. Anyways, the 2 gunships goes in because you really want to. They're both 500 plus points. Oh wait, there it is. There's the other gunship. I think those 2 are the only units I really put into because you really want to. We might mix it up at the end and reorder things, but for now, those are the 2 units I'm just I just don't see you spending 1/4 of the army on any of these unless you really want to. So that was the quick explanation of the tier lists, or tier list categories. Now let's actually get started. First of all, we have the Contemptor Achilles Dreadnought. This was probably it might not have been the best, but one of the best datasheets in 9th edition, and he's still fine. Unfortunately, he lost a lot of durability. He's no longer -1 damage, and he no longer has a 6-up Feel No Pain. He also lost 3 inches of movement. His damage have gone down in melee, not by a whole lot. It's D6 plus 2 now, where it used to be D3 plus 3. Where he's mostly lost things are the 3-inch movement and his shooting options. The Flamer is the exact same as it was in 9th edition. However, the Adretic Destructor is down by 1 shot. So you had 2 twin Adretic Destructors. They're just twin-linked now. The output might come out to be the same, but, losing the shots, losing the volume does matter. And I actually also think it lost an AP now that I think about it. It used to be AP3 damage 3. I think it's AP2 damage 3 now. The Spear is only 1 shot now, and rather than 24-inch shooting, it's only 12-inch shooting. And then there's the Storm Bolters, which I actually think are the same as they were before. But all your gun options are free. I am gonna go ahead and assume that you put Flamers on it, because that seems like the most solid choice. I haven't done the math, but I believe 2d6 Flamers at strength 6 AP1 damage 1 will do roughly the same as Twin Adretic Destructors. The Twin Adretic Destructors have the 6-inch range, but you want to get this guy in melee, and then you also add in the option for overwatching some chaff, or just, whatever comes into range. In general, I think the Flamers are the correct choice to throw on the Achilles. I'm not 100% sure on it. He is 155 points, which is very cheap. It is the cheapest Dreadnought that Custodians have access to. However, 6-inch movement, he cannot deep strike, and he's not nearly as tough as he was before. I think I will have to put the Achilles Contemptor in average. When the Forge World datasheets first came out, I was like, oh yeah, he's a solid choice. But then I thought more about it, and like, if the meta is gonna be Space Marines with 15 tanks and Imperial Knights, Imperial Guard with a bunch of artillery, Eldar being Eldar, against all of those, I just don't see this guy making it into combat before he's dead. But he is 155 points, and I would say he's an average choice. If you really like the model and you really like Dreadnoughts, yeah, I could totally see him being an average choice. Moving on to our next unit, we have Alea. This is the named character for Sisters of Silence. She gives the unit she joins fight first, and +1 to hit if they're below starting strength, as well as +1 to wound if they are below half strength. She also has a 5-up Feel No Pain, I believe, and then a 5-up Invulnerable save. Her weapon is like 4 attacks at strength 6, AP 2, damage 3 with devastating wounds. So she can do some damage. She gives out fight first. She's fine. Yeah, she's like 60 points. The only issue is that, you can make Sister of Silence a bit killy, but not a ton. I also think she goes into average. I think is she above the Contemptor? I'm gonna throw her behind the Contemptor for now, and then we'll go back to it. The issue with Sisters of Silence is that they don't really have a delivery method except for the Rhino. And the Rhino is fine, it's like 80 points. But so it's like 70 points for a Leia, 80 points for a Rhino, and then anywhere between 100 to 150 points for a squad of Sisters, and then it's like 250 points for something that's not gonna do a whole lot. But if you want to build a Killy Sister squad with a 3-up Feel No Pain against Grey Knights and Thousand Suns, it's fine. It's okay. It's a fun choice. I can totally see a fun choice of Alea rolling up with some Sisters of Silence and a Rhino, and then the Rhino gets shot at but has a 3-up Feel No Pain against psychic attacks. Then the Sisters comes out and you're like, we're gonna overwatch them. And they're like, well, I have a 3-up Feel No Pain against that as well. Yeah, okay, yeah, I can totally see that would be fun. That could be a small fun combo, which is probably a bit too expensive to include in Custodians in general, but hey, sometimes fun is just fun. Alright, moving on, we have the Allarus Custodians. I'm just gonna go ahead and throw them up in no questions asked. These boys fuck so hard. You can take them in MSU squads of up to 2 Custodians, that's the, or Allarus, that's the minimum size squads. However, I actually really like taking 5 or 6-man squads, and then including an Allarus Terminator Captain to get free stratagems. And, their shooting is pretty crazy. It's not the strongest shooting in the world, but you get a lot of shots with the grenade launcher. You're re-rolling the wound roll, because hopefully you're targeting either a normal unit with a character in it, or a monster or a vehicle. So yeah, you get a lot of shots hitting on 2s. And then, yeah, maybe you're wounding on 4, 5, or 6, but you reroll the entire wound roll. And that just turns out to be a lot of shots going through in most cases. Their melee is great, 5 attacks with the spear, don't take the axe. I've said this in probably every Custodian video ever, just don't take the axe. Just don't do it, it doesn't make sense currently. But yeah, 5 or 6 of these guys led by a captain. You could include a Vexilla. I'm a bit on and off with the Vexilla. In one way, it's like, okay, if these guys are holding an objective and they get battle shocked, the Vexilla will make sure that I still hold this objective. On the other hand, they're not really meant to hold objectives, so it's not like I'm gonna leave them on those objectives, and they're supposed to kill whatever they come in contact with. So I'm a bit iffy on including the Vexilla or not. I think I prefer it without the Vexilla, but that is an option if you want to. You lose out on some melee attacks. Or rather, some stronger melee attacks, you still get the Misericordia. But yeah, Allarus are really, really strong. Personally, as I said, I like to run a larger block of them with a captain, but you can also run 2-man squads to help you complete various secondaries or just score primaries, and they're still fairly threatening even as a 2-man squad, just not to vehicles and monsters because you just don't have the output to take them down in one go. But Allarus, no questions asked. I don't care if you include 2 or you include 10. They are just like, if I see them on your list, I'm just gonna be like, yep, that makes sense. Yep, no questions asked. And from the Allarus, we go to the Aquilon Terminators, and these guys go into the mostly for fun category. They are on a larger base, so they're harder to hide. They're more expensive than Allarus. Their reroll is only once to wound, and it's only against the closest target, which is, what you want to charge most of the time. And yeah, they're just not nearly as good as the Allarus Custodians. The only thing I'm gonna give the Aquilons over the Allarus is they can take flamers. So if you want to have an Overwatch unit with a fairly strong flamer, this is your best choice. Actually, now that I think about it, one Achilles Contemptor is 155 points, and 3 of these guys are like 235 points or something like that. You do get one more flamer, but it's the exact same profile as the flamer on the Contemptor Achilles. So you pay almost 100 points more for one model to get one more flamer. You do get more melee output, of course, but if we're just talking in terms of Overwatch capabilities, it's actually cheaper to just take a Contemptor Achilles and throw in an objective and have be like, yeah, I'm gonna Overwatch you. Yeah, in any case, Aquilons, you weren't very good in 9th edition, you're not very good in 10th edition. However, I can agree that they are very cool models, so if you want to use them, they can be used, but it's mostly for fun. Moving on, we have the Shield Captain on Virtus Praetor, and this guy is so good. He is so fucking good. Consolidate 6 inches instead of 3. Once per game, you can do the either normal move or fall back in your opponent's fight phase. At the end of your opponent's fight phase, you can either make a normal move or fall back if you're in engagement range. That is really fucking strong. You move 12 inches and you can fall back in your opponent's turn or make a normal move in your opponent's turn. It's after the fight phase, so nothing can hurt them. That is so good. Unfortunately, and I think we'll just do the Shield Captain along with the unit he can join at the same time, he can only join Virtus Praetors or Forge World Bikes, but let's not get into Forge World Bikes. And that kinda hampers him, because holy shit is his rules good, and he's only like 145 points. That is really good. Unfortunately, the unit he can join is Virtus Praetors, which are 90 points per bike. Their shooting has gone down, their durability has gone down. Their melee is good. Their melee is still really good. And don't get me wrong, a captain and 2 Virtus Praetors, because you can take them in units of 2 now, is a solid killer unit. Because you move 12 in your opponent's fight phase, then you move 12 in your own turn, then you charge something, and you still get a lot of attacks. At strength 7, plus 1 to wound because you charged. And they still do a lot of work. The issue being that the captain is 145 points, and then 2 Virtus Praetors is 180 points. So you're paying almost 350 points, or 325, for the combo. And it's the issue being that like they can go up and they'll probably kill whatever they charge, okay? If you charge like a 5-man squad of Terminators, you're probably not gonna kill all of them, but you're gonna take out 3 or 4 of them. If you charge a vehicle, you're gonna do a good amount of damage to it. But then when you get hit back and then the enemy falls back and then, you charge them because you moved far up the board, you're probably in range of a lot of shooting or a lot of melee units, and then you get clapped back. And at that point, you lose 325 points without probably making those points back in terms of killing efficiency. So here's what we're gonna do. The captain goes into solid choice. It's weird because the only unit he can join is going into average. Again, the combo is strong. If you can get the right target and you can perfectly kill it, you might be able to make back 200 points. But then on the clapback on your opponent's turn, they're probably gonna die, and you're not gonna have made those 325 points back. So yeah, the captain is super strong, but unfortunately he is being held back quite a bit by the Virtus Praetors being too expensive. If you're going to ask me what I think Virtus Praetors should be costed at to be a viable choice, we're probably talking about 75 points, maybe 80. At that point, when they're joined by a captain, I think they're fine. But yeah, losing toughness, well, they didn't lose toughness, but they didn't gain toughness either. They lost a wound, their shooting went down, fly isn't nearly as good in 10th edition as it was in 9th edition, between all those things and their points cost, they're just not great. They go into average, but the Shield Captain goes into solid choice. I think so. I'm just gonna leave them like this. But if you didn't take the Shield Captain, I think the bikes go into mostly for fun. I don't think the bikes work at all on their own. They need to have a captain to work. But assuming you take a Shield Captain with them, they go into average. However, the next unit here is not average at all. It is the Blade Champion, and he goes into no questions asked. Have him join Custodian Guard, have him join Wardens, I don't care. He's amazing. He takes 2 different enhancements very well. You can either give him Veiled Blade for more attacks, or Ceaseless Hunter for fallback, shoot, and charge for his unit. He cost 100 points. Like, huh? 100 points. And then he gives the unit reroll advance and charge rolls. Once per game, advance and charge. And the advance and charge does not have to be declared when you advance. You simply declare it when you're going to charge. And then for free, you can do Heroic Intervention with his unit. On top of that, he has 3 different weapon profiles. One meant for devastating wounds, one for chaff clearing, and the last one I forget, but I think like the one you take in 9 out of 10 situations is a devastating wounds one. And then if he's with guard, he gets the reroll wound rolls, and you just fish for 6s against a vehicle, or just reroll the ones, or the failed ones against whatever else. He is a super solid choice. I think every single list that we're going to see competitively will have a Blade Champion in them, unless they don't like include infantry at all. All the lists that I've been building have been including him. I think he's amazing. No questions asked. Very, very good. Another very, very good unit is the Caladius Grav Tank. The Caladius Grav Tank is probably also going into no questions asked, just because it's such a good anti-tank platform with that's very tough to kill. It has a 2-up save, T12 I believe, and then I forget, is it 12 or 13 wounds? It doesn't have like a shit ton of wounds, but it has a good save, it has an invuln, it has good toughness, and its shooting is just really good. You always take the Heavy Blades Cannon, don't even try and question it. The Ilias's Accelerator is just nowhere nearly as close in terms of viability. So you just slap the Heavy Blades Cannon on that thing, and you actually have some anti-tank shooting that will do pretty well. It is only strength 12, but it's twin-linked and lethal hits, so you can shoot this at whatever monster or vehicle you want to, and you can do some solid damage. Now the question is, how many do you include in your army if you do include them? I think anything from 1 to 3 is viable. I know Art of War guys, he was like, I don't want 1, I don't want 2, I always want 3. When you start taking 3 of them, they take up like 650 points of your army. I believe they're 225 points or 215 points. So at that point, I'm just like, yeah man, that's a lot of your army. I personally just run with 1, because I only have 1. But if you have 1, 2, or 3, I think all of those are viable options to include. Obviously, if we're going into a meta that is just Space Marine tanks, Imperial Knights, a lot of big things, then you probably want 3 of them. But I'm also perfectly fine with just someone just having 1 in their list. I'm just gonna be like, yep, that's also pretty good. You know, even if there's no vehicles, you can shoot this at whatever tough infantry they have, and probably kill 2 or 3 of them. So yeah, I think the Caladius is amazing. Next up, we have the regular Shield Captain on foot. This guy also goes into no questions asked. Let him join Wardens, let him join Custodian Guard, I don't care, he's great. His defensive profile is the same as a Custodian Guard or Warden, but he gets plus 3 wounds? I think he goes to 6 wounds, I believe. He gets 2 more attacks with his spear, so he has 7 attacks. And then his abilities are the free stratagem. I forgot to say that the Shield Captain on bike also gives the free stratagem. Only once per battle round, and only 1 unit with the ability can do it. So it's not like you can do a free stratagem with the bike captain and then a free stratagem with the Shield Captain on foot. And then he also gives you double martial kata, so you can choose 2 of them instead of 1 of them for the unit he is joining. And then finally, his once per game ability is that you get all the kata active for the fight phase. Yeah, super solid choice, very, very strong. Next up, we have the Coronis Grav Carrier, and honestly, this is the one I'm the most conflicted about where I put. It has fine shooting, nothing amazing, it can do some mortal wounds, it can transport up to 8 Custodian infantry. Keep in mind this includes Terminators, and then whatever it fires at, if you disembark from it afterwards, or sorry, if you fire at something and then, you know, you've disembarked, then you can reroll the entire wound roll against that target. I think it's called Fire Support. That's the ability. It's fairly tough, 2-up save, high toughness, high amount of wounds, 5-up invulnerable save, and it's only 200 points. Or maybe it's 205. In any case, it's surprisingly cheap. I think the Land Raider is 250 points, 240 points. It might even be more, 260 points. So you lose the last cannons, which is obviously quite a big loss. You also lose the disembark and charge. But then you gain +2 capacity for transporting, as well as the reroll wound rolls and shooting. Which reroll wound rolls and shooting is not amazing for Custodes, but it's fine. But yeah, I'm a bit unsure about the Coronas. My instinct tells me it's a mostly for fun, but I also kind of want to put it in average. I can see someone putting 5 Sagittarium and 3 Allarus Terminators into a Caladius, and the Caladius can just go up the middle, shoot something, come on, stuff comes out of it. Sagittarium activate their devastating wounds. They reroll all the wound rolls, fishing for 6s. They deal somewhere between 6 to 8 mortals. And then, if the Allarus comes out, they can also shoot at that target. They probably already reroll the wound roll, because they reroll wound rolls against characters, monsters, and vehicles. Or you can leave the Terminators in the Coronas and it can move again. It moves 12 inches, I think. It has fly, so you can fly over all enemy units as well as your own units. I think it's average. Honestly, I think it's average. I don't think there's a ton you can do to make this a very strong choice, but I think there's a ton of things you can do where people just be like, yeah, that seems okay. And that is my take on the Coronas Graph Carrier. I think I place it in average. I think it's honestly, on its own, I think it's better than bikes. Bikes might be slightly better when they're joined by a shield captain. The Coronas is better than bikes because bikes without a bike captain goes into mostly for fun. But I think I'm pretty happy with putting it in average. I can see a lot of fun things to do with it. Again, nothing that's gonna break the meta or be like a super competitive tactic, but a lot of fun choices. Alright, moving on, we have the next Dreadnought, which is the Venerable Dreadnought. This is just a normal Contemptor Dreadnought, but it's hitting on 2s. I think it has the exact same stat line as the Space Marine Contemptor, but hits on 2s. It's 185 points, which is 30 points more expensive than it was in 9th edition. Its ability, however, is, this Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought is also a victim of durability changes. It doesn't have -1 damage anymore. It doesn't have a 6-up feel no pain anymore. It is toughness, are we toughness 9? I think we're toughness 9 on our Contemptor Dreadnoughts now. So 7 to 9 means it's roughly the same. However, its ability lets it stand up again at the end of the phase on a 2+, with d6 wounds remaining. So it's slightly harder to kill. On average, I think it would be like roughly the same durability as it was in 9th edition. However, its shooting has gone way down because multi-meltas are nowhere near as good as before. Its melee is roughly the same. 5 attacks, strength 12, AP 3, damage 3. It might be AP 2, not AP 3. It used to be strength 14. He is honestly also probably average. The Art of War guys mentioned they could see a version of this where you take 3 of these guys and you just have them march up one of the flanks. And it's pretty much just like, you can kill one of them and then on a 2+ he comes back. And then while you've put all that firepower into one of them, the 2 other guys are going to start marching up towards you, and the rest of my army is marching up towards you. And I can see that. I don't see you taking one of them. I see you taking a minimum of 2 of them and pairing them together and be like, you can either focus all your fire into those 2 guys over here, which are going to come back on a 2+, once per game by the way, not every single time, which makes them fairly tough to remove. Or you can ignore them, and then all of a sudden you will have multi-melta in range and melee fists ready to go. I think he goes into average. I think he goes above. It's kind of hard because we're making scenarios up here, right? Let's take it this way. 2 of these guys walking up a flank is probably more scary for your opponent than 2 Achilles walking up a flank. Because the Achilles, they know once they're killed, they're done, right? Whereas with these guys, you kill them once, and then at the end of the phase, they stand back up again on a 2+. Then you have to commit melee to kill them. And by going into melee, you're basically just making my job easier because, I'm trying to reach you anyway. Whereas with these guys, you can reliably just stand further away from them, shoot them, they die, they don't come back. So I think 2 Venerable Dreadnoughts walking up the side of the board is scarier than 2 Contemptor or Achilles Dreadnoughts walking up the side of the board. So I think he goes above the Achilles. He is more expensive by 30 points. It's very hard. I think they're very, very closely together. I think he slightly takes out the edge. The next Dreadnought we have is the Galatus, and this one is also weird for me. The Galatus is excellent at killing anti-infantry. It's strength 8, AP 3, damage 3 with 8 attacks. It is -1 to wound in melee because of the shield, and it also gets a 4-up invulnerable save, whereas these guys only get a 5-up invulnerable save. So he is more tough to kill. However, he can't really kill vehicles, but he can kill, say, Terminators very well. The issue being that we already kill Terminators quite well with, say, Custodian Guards, Allarus, or Wardens. And so, once again, I think he goes into average with the 2 other Dreadnoughts. I am tempted to say that he is, on paper, better than the Achilles. But, as I said, honestly, all 3 of these guys are, in my books, like, basically side grades. It kind of depends on what you're looking for. Something where there is no questions asked, well, it is the Custodian Guard. And honestly, I think, so I didn't sort these out over here. I think Custodian Guards go to the very top, Allarus 2nd, Caladius 3rd, Blade Champion, Shield Captain. Right, Custodian Guard is they're just amazing. They are great at defending objectives, they're great at taking objectives, they're great at killing things on objectives, they shoot twice, which makes it surprisingly hard to, like, keep anything alive. That's not like T8. Yeah, they're just really, really freaking good. I don't really have much more to say about it. Once again, like the Allarus, whether you take a lot of MSU squads or one big brick, I don't think I question it. I just think I'm like, yeah, if you take the big brick and you put a Blade Champion with them, now your opponent has to be scared about an advance and charge for this, like, unkillable brick that can also kill anything they come in contact with. If you take the MSU squads and just plop them down on objectives, you're making it pretty hard for your opponent to come charge you, because you can always just fight first and you reroll all the wound rolls, and even if you don't fight first, I mean, they're still fairly tough to take down with T6 4-up invuln. But I think, like, on paper, Custodian Guards are our single best unit in the book. A unit that I am not able to try myself because I don't have one, but I have seen lots of people talk about and say they like, is the Venerable Land Raider. It is the same Land Raider as a Space Marine Land Raider, but it's for some reason like 5 points cheaper, and it also hits on 2s instead of 3s. It does not get an invuln, but yeah, 5 points cheaper and hits on 2s. Last cannons are one of our only anti-tank options alongside the Caladius. Transporting 6 Custodians, that's fine. You can disembark and charge. It's fine, it's totally reasonable. 265 points, I believe, which is pretty spicy. I am gonna go ahead and throw him in solid choice. I'm gonna throw him ahead of the Bike Captain, just because, you know, the Bike Captain on his own just doesn't really do anything, but he is a solid choice. Whereas the Land Raider, I mean, even if you don't put anything into the Land Raider, it's a fairly tough, decently anti-tank platform. So yeah, I can see the Land Raider being a solid choice. Next up, another vehicle, we have the classic Rhino. This one probably just goes into average choice, probably definitely above the bikes, but is it also above the Coronis Graph Carrier? It might be. So it can only transport Sisters of Silence. It does get a 3-up Feel No Pain because it's a Sister of Silence unit. But other than that, you know, you can put a 100 kilo missile on it. That's fine. Yeah, it's an average choice, but obviously requires you to have some Sister of Silence to put inside of it. The Palace Gravatack. The Palace Gravatack comes in at 125 points, I believe, which honestly makes it way too freaking expensive. The guns on the Palace Gravatack is the same gun as the Coronis Graph Carrier gets, but the Palace does not have any transport capacity. It's toughness 10, I believe, with a 2-up save and like 10 wounds. It's fairly tough to kill, but at 125 points, I don't see it. It goes into mostly for fun for me. Its shooting gun. Its gun is fine. It'll deal some mortal wounds, but not like a ton. It'll deal like 2 on average. So I don't see it as a competitive choice. I don't even see it as an average choice. I see it as a mostly for fun choice. Now we have some Sisters of Silence, and I'm a bit unsure if this is the Witch Seekers or the Prosecutors. It's a bit hard to see on the pictures. Let's just say they are Prosecutors. They will go into average. They are 10 points per model. You can take as little as 4 of them. So for 40 points per model, you can have a backline objective holder that can occasionally do some damage to a Psyker unit, and that's about it. The Knight Centura, very much like the Sister of Silence in general, goes into the average tier. She gives Sister of Silence +2 move, +2 advance, and +2 charge. She then also has a rule where she forces enemies that's in combat with her to take a desperate escape test. So if they want to fall back, they have to roll a dice for each model, and on a 1 or a 2, that model is destroyed. It's all fine. She's probably like Alea and her are like basically side grades. Alea gives fight first and makes them better to hit. The Centura makes them faster. It's like it can go either way. I think Alea goes first, but like if you say this Knight Centura is better than Alea, I'm gonna be like, yeah, that's fine. I can agree with that. Okay, whatever. They're basically side grades. I can see both of them being fine. The Allarus Shield Captain also goes up into the no questions asked. His ability in itself is not very good. He gives the free stratagem, that's very good, but the fight on death on a 2+ is not something particularly amazing. However, he is, well, a captain, gives out the free stratagem, gets +2 attacks, gets the +3 wounds, so he has 7 wounds. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. Whether or not the Shield Captain on foot or the Allarus Terminator Captain is above each other, like if it's like this or if it's like this, I would say completely matters if you take MSU Allarus or if you take blobs of Allarus. If you take a large blob of Allarus, I mean, I would probably include this guy 100% of the time. But if you take MSU Allarus, then, you know, I can see you not including this guy at all. So yeah, again, like Alea and the Knight Centura, it basically depends on your list building, and I can see both go either way. Because I am biased towards Allarus Custodians, I am gonna place him above the Shield Captain. But you can totally convince me that the Shield Captain on foot is better than the Allarus. I think it matters mostly how your list is built. But that's like, yeah, that's my final take on it. You know what, just real quick, I'm gonna take a hit. The prosecutors, you know what, the prosecutors are better than the Dreadnoughts, because they're just cheap backline holders. They do their job for the points they cost better than any of the Dreadnoughts, so yeah. Prosecutors are gonna go be above the Dreadnoughts. The final Dreadnought, speaking of which, is the Telemon Heavy Dreadnought, and oh boy, does he kinda suck. His gun will on average, like either version of the gun will like on average kill 1 Terminator, and then 1.5 or 2 Marines. It'll deal like 2 mortal wounds to a monster or a vehicle. His melee is fine. He is T10 with a 2-up save, 4-up invulnerable, and -1 damage. So he is, you know, durable. He moves 8 inches, which is better than the other guys, but his base is also quite a bit bigger. He's on a 100mm base, and these guys are on a 60mm base. So he's also harder to hide as you push up, but he's also more durable. Yeah. The thing is, I kind of want to put him in mostly for fun, because he is 235 points. But I feel like if I put him in mostly for fun, I also need to move the other Dreadnoughts down into mostly for fun. So you know what? I am gonna put him in average, and I'm gonna put him like here. I think for his points cost, he is worse than the other Dreadnoughts. But the other Dreadnoughts are also kind of bad for their points cost, so it's a bit, yeah, I'm not so sure about it. I like the Telemon as a model. I think he's super cool, but like, yeah, I don't know. Man. I did the math for his gun, and it was so disappointing. It's not worth taking double guns. You always want to take 1 gun, 1 fist. Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, the Telemon, I just really want him to be good, but he's just not. He's fine. He's okay. Trajan goes into no questions asked. He probably goes, I think he's below. So here's the conversation, okay? I've had this with so many people. I think Trajan or a Shield Captain on foot are equally good. Trajan is more killy because he gets more attacks with a better profile. He also lets his unit ignore all minuses to hit or wound or damage modifiers. So in a way, if you're making a kill squad, you kinda wanna take Trajan in it. On the other hand, a Shield Captain gives them free fight first or free -1 damage, or free +1 to wound, as well as double martial katas or even triple martial katas once per game. Then there's also the Blade Champion, because yeah, if you want something to die, you want to throw Trajan into it, but if you want something to die, you can also just take, 9 Custodian guards and give them advance and charge, and then they'll probably kill whatever they touch. So Trajan lives in this weird limbo where he's great, he's still very good, but I can totally see anyone be like, I'd rather just have a Shield Captain, or I'd rather just have another Blade Champion. So yeah, in my head, like basically all these characters, basically all of them. Well, actually no, the Blade Champion stands on his own. The Blade Champion is too good, but like the Foot Captain and Trajan, side grades. You can take one or the other, and I'll probably just be like, both are equally good choices. So yeah, I think Trajan is amazing, but I can also totally see you just not taking him and just taking a shield captain instead. Vexillus Terminators doesn't exist anymore. Same with Vexillus, Vexillus Guard. They are no longer separate characters. They are simply included in the unit. So we're not gonna rank those guys. These are the Vigilators. They are the Sword Sisters of Silence. I think they are worse than Prosecutors because they are more expensive. Their melee is honestly quite good, but they are toughness 3 bodies with a 3-up armor save with 1 wound, so they die to boulders. So I think they go below the Rhino actually. Like if you throw them in a Rhino with a Knight Centura and you're playing against a Psychic army, now we're talking about some fun stuff. But on their own, they're just like, they just don't really do it for me. Valerian is honestly a solid choice. He is a solid choice. Unfortunately, what he does for the unit he joins is give them Armor of Contempt in melee, and we don't need help in melee. If we're in melee with something, chances are we kill it before they kill us, because we get to fight first. So he is definitely below a shield captain on foot, but he's a solid choice. He's like 105 points? No, that's not right. 115 points? I forget. He's either slightly more expensive than a shield captain on foot, or slightly cheaper. And yeah, if you want to play with Valerian, he's a cool unit. I think he's a solid choice. He just, like, the thing he does is not amazing for Custodes, because we don't really need it. But he has good fighting, good shooting, and fine rules. So, you know what? I'm putting him in solid choice. I can see you taking him if you like him, but he's not absolutely insane. I just realized this tier list is missing a lot of Force World units. Oh well, we'll talk about that anyway. Venatari are going into average. Above bikes, probably also above the telemon, probably also above... this is hard. So, the Venatari. With spears, you don't take shield and pistols. They killed the pistol, they've murdered it. Venatari are good. Venatari are actually amazing. Venatari is actually so fucking good. But they cost like 78 points per model. So that kind of kills them. Which makes me think it's more likely that I would take a Knight Centura and a Rhino than I would Venatari. And then again, you know what, fuck it, I'm throwing them up here. I'm throwing them behind the Dreadnoughts. I think they're less likely to be taken than a Dreadnought, but more likely than the Sister Silence characters. Which also makes me want to move up the Coronas and the Telemon. Hard choices, hard choices. Anyways, the Venatari, they get Rapid Ingress for free, and then I forget what their other ability is. In any case, their melee profile is the same as regular guard, 5 attacks, strength 7, AP 2, damage 2, but they get the lance keyword, so they get +1 to wound, which makes them even better at killing infantry. They fly 12 inches, they can move through ruins because they're infantry, and yeah, they like stat line, ability-wise, they are just so good, but they cost 78 points per model. And at that point, I'm like, yeah, you can take them, but they're average at best. Moving on, we have the Custodian Wardens. These guys are going to go to the top of the solid choice list. The reason why I give them solid choice and not no questions asked is that I can see a list where you take no Wardens, but I don't see a list where you take no Custodian Guards. Wardens are very good, extremely good, like they're super solid. However, to effectively work, you need to put a character in their unit, because otherwise they don't get access to their -1 to wound ability. Or -1 to wound against, you know, something that's higher toughness, higher strength than their toughness. You just don't get that ability if you don't have a character in the unit. You still get the 4-up Feel No Pain for 1 phase, once per game. But yeah, they need a character to actually work. They're also less killy than Custodian Guards because they don't get reroll wounds. So they are much more of a second wave or objective holding, like middle objective holding unit. Whereas the Custodian Guard can kind of fill like all the roles. They can hold objectives, they can be a killing unit, they can also kind of be a shooting unit because they can shoot twice. So where I see Wardens as being a completely amazing choice. Absolutely. However, I think you need to include a character in the unit before they become good. Like really good. Without a character, they're just a solid choice. And that's why I'm saying that I don't see a list without Custodian Guards in them, but I can see a list without Wardens in them. Which is why I'm putting them at the top of solid choice, which obviously means they are still really good. Alright, now we have the Witch Seekers, and these probably go in average below Prosecutors, because they are 5 points more expensive, but they do get Flamers, which is obviously a lot better in 10th edition than they were in 9th edition, because you can Overwatch in the movement phase and in the charge phase, or not both, but in the charge phase rather. The Flamers did lose a lot. They are now Strength 4, AP 0, Damage 1. But they're still fine. They have a Scout move, so they move 6 inches per game. And yeah, you know, it's fine. It's okay. It's not amazing. It's fine. For their points cost, they do roughly the same as Prosecutors. But yeah, they're 5 points more per model, which is a lot more. It's 50% more points. But they're still average. They're still fine. And then, so what is missing from Forge Worlds is Sagittarum Custodes as well as the Forge World bikes. The Forge World bikes goes into because you really want to, because somehow they're even more expensive than Virtus Praetor bikes, and their shooting is worse, and their melee is the same. So as I was saying, if you don't include a shield captain with the Virtus Praetors goes into mostly for fun. And since the Agamatus bikes from Forge World are somehow even worse than these guys and more expensive, they go into because you really want to. So let's pretend this guy is the Agamatus bike. I forget, can you draw in here? You cannot. Okay, in any case, let's imagine this guy is the Agamatus bikes. He goes into the mostly because you really want to use Agamatus bikes. Then we have the Sagittarum. We're just going to use this as the representation for Sagittarum Custodians. They are locked to a unit of 5. They cost 50 points per model. Their ability is that they give -1 to hit to one target that they've been shooting at. And then once per game, they get devastating wounds. They shoot with a heavy bolter, strength 5, AP 1, damage 2. With sustained hits, they get 3 shots each. They are an average choice. Where do they go? I'm not sure they're better than Dread. Like, 5 Custodian guards cost the same as, 5 Custodian Sagittarums cost the same as 1 Contemptor Achilles. They're cheaper than the Galatus, and they're also cheaper than the Venerable Dreadnought. Yeah, I'm so not sure where to place these guys. They're probably either behind the Dreadnoughts or ahead of the Dreadnoughts. I think they are better than the Venatari, just because Venatari are very expensive. The Venatari are really good as well. They're just really expensive. This is hard. This is very hard. I think Sagittarum goes below Venatari. Yeah, let's leave it like this. Let's leave it like this. I think this is the tier list. So as you can see, we have a lot of average choices. Like a lot of average choices. And remember, average doesn't mean bad. Average means average. If you have a way to make them work, they're completely fine. Or if you really like the model, then I don't see any issue including any of these. We have 4 choices for solid choice, 2 of them being characters that, need something to join before they are solid choices. But the Land Raider and the Wardens are really good. And then no questions asked, we have 4 characters, 2 infantry choices, and 1 tank. You know what, fuck it. No, Wardens go into no questions asked. As I said, I can see a list where there are no Wardens in it. But at the same time, if you include Wardens, I don't need you to explain why you included them. So they go into no questions asked as well. I'll just put them at the bottom of no questions asked and we'll call it there. Thinking more about it, I think the Telemon goes into mostly for fun. I also think that the Venatari goes into mostly for fun. The Sagittarum goes mostly into for fun. The Corona's Graph Carrier goes into mostly for fun. The Vigilators goes into mostly for fun. And the Rhino goes into mostly for fun. And the Centura and Alea goes into mostly for fun. I'm moving a lot of stuff into mostly for fun. But the reason I do that is just because, like, the Sisters of Silence combo you can do with the Rhino only works against a Psychic army. So if you take a Rhino, fill it up with Sisters of Silence and a character, and you're playing against a Psychic army like Grey Knights or Thousand Sons, then yes, you will have a, free up Feel No Pain on all these guys, and it'll be fun. Which is exactly what this category is for. It's mostly for fun. In 9 out of 10 games, you're not going to be playing against a Psyker. Well, like a lot of Psykers. And then, they're just like 250 points rolling around, not really doing a whole lot. So all of these girls by themselves goes into mostly for fun. The Vigilators, like, again, they have good melee, but they need to be delivered. And they cannot be delivered by anything other than the Rhino. And at that point, we're starting to have a pretty large points investment. And that's where I'm like, yeah. I'm taking the Venatari, the Sagittarum, the Telemon, and the Corona's Graph Carrier back up. Because I looked at these guys, the Terminators, Forge World Terminators, and I was like, there's no way that Sagittarum, Venatari, Telemon, and Corona's Graph Carrier are as bad as those guys. So yeah, maybe I should move these guys into because you really want to. Okay, I can keep going back and forth here. Let's just call it here. This is my tier list. I've given my opinions on why I think what goes where. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you join the Discord, I will link this tier list maker so you can use it yourself. And then you can share a picture of it on the Discord server. Link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. And until I see you again, I hope you have a wonderful time.